Hey everyone, welcome back to Williamson Ridge Outdoors. Today we are standing out here at the back of the truck because we have a new product, and this is the Ego 56 volt 20-inch battery chainsaw. And you know what? I have never had an Ego product on my channel, and I thought, you know, it's about time to have one because Ego now claims to be the #1 in battery power equipment. And so in the past, you know, whenever I've thought about battery chainsaws, you know, I thought about Echo and I thought about Steel and Husqvarna. And of course, then you get into the tool manufacturers that do these chainsaws like Milwaukee and Dewalt. And so, you know, that's kind of along the lines that I have thought as power tool battery chainsaws. Ego does a wide range of battery powered equipment, and that's all they do. They don't do gas powered equipment at all. And if I'm not mistaken, they were one of the first to really start introducing the battery powered equipment. So I thought, well, man, this really deserves to have, you know, a place here. And now that they've got this farm and ranch saw that, you know, they're kind of putting this in towards like a Steel MS271 that is a farm and ranch saw with a 20-inch bar on it. And that's kind of the category that they're putting this chainsaw into. So today's video is going to be my first thoughts on this saw. I'm going to take it out. We're going to do some cutting with it, and I'm going to give you my opinions about it based on that. So let's just take a quick look at the saw, and I'll show you some of the details in here that I noticed right off the bat. And then we're going to take it out and try it out. So one of the things I noticed is this chain. This does not have your typical little low profile safety chain. This has actually got, it is still a 3/8 low profile, but it is a full 50 thousandths, and it is also a full chisel chain. And it does not have the rakers and stuff that come up and curve over and that are the low kickback deal. This is more like what you would find on a, you know, 40cc gas chainsaw upwards of a 50cc. And just as a comparison, look how small the teeth are. This is the chain for the Dewalt 60 volt battery saw versus the Ego. But there's a huge difference in the size of the teeth that's on this saw compared to the Dewalt 60 volt. The sheer size of this saw is really close to a 50 to 60 cc gas counterpart. Like it's really a large bodied saw. It does have your typical chain brake on here. So down here on the bottom we do have the storage for the tool. And the nuts here for the bar are actually very large on this. These are also captured nuts, so they stay with the guard. You don't have to worry about them falling off. The sprocket here on the chain does not have one of those big washers over it. It's actually made more like a gas clutch, other than the fact that it doesn't have the clutch housing on the back. But your chain access, once you loosen your chain, should just come right off there without any problem. But this looks very traditional, like a gas-powered saw, the way that all this is mounted up. And then, of course, you got your metal studs right here, and then your chain adjuster. Of course, that sticks through your guard. And then you can see your oiler port right here behind the chain, which all that looks pretty well standard. It does have a metal plate here for the chain to squeeze onto. So the next thing that this saw has is it does have a digital screen right here that gives you your battery reading and kind of tells you your status of your saw. Also your safety switch right here. So as you're trying to saw, then you can just kind of reach up and hit that with your thumb to be able to pull the trigger. Now, when you activate the trigger, it does turn everything on here. So when you hit the trigger, you can see the screen light up. It tells you your battery gauge. It also gives you your selection of whether you're in economy, medium, or fast mode. It also has a setting to where that you can turn the headlight on. There's also the battery indicator on the side of the saw that lights up. So it gives you status of the battery here, and then also on your screen up here. Something I did notice about that though, yesterday, I put the battery in it just kind of checking out the screen, and the battery showed like 2 bars on it, and then the screen showed something different. So I'm not sure if they're 100% in sync with each other, but maybe it will be whenever you start from a fresh battery and work your way all the way down to dead. Now you can see how large the battery is, and it does stick out from what the body of the saw actually is. But you can see your oil fill is right here on the side. It's got a flip up cap on it, so that gives you leverage to be able to screw and unscrew this. I really like this feature. This is like a lot of the steel saws have, but you don't need any tools to be able to take that loose. It's got nice heavy metal bucking spikes on it, and it is only on the one side, it's not on both. But then, like I said, you got a headlight right here, and you can turn it on low beam, and it does have high beam. Now, I don't know how much light that'll put out, and I don't know why you necessarily would need a headlight on your chainsaw, but I don't know, maybe working in low light conditions that could actually be of help. But typically, in my opinion, I mean, unless you're in an emergency situation, you're not likely sawing firewood in the dark. I mean, that's a pretty dangerous situation to be in. But if there's something going on like a storm and you're doing storm cleanup, then that may be where that's going to come in handy and be, you know, something important to have. Now that we've kind of went through an overview on this, let's go cut some wood with it and see what it does. So I'm going to start out with this on the eco mode and then just kind of get an idea of the power. So that first cut was on eco mode, the slowest setting, and it had no need for any more power. It did not even attempt to bog down. So let's turn it up. I'm going to go ahead this entire log, and I'm just going to saw it up and see what battery we have left when we get done, and I'll show you pretty much, you know, how much it cut. This is a big log. This is almost 20 inches. It's almost the full length of the bar. But just with that first cut, I'll have to say I'm very impressed. So like I was saying, that's a pretty good sized tree. That is pretty much to the capacity of the bar. Look at these nice sized chunks of sawdust. That's what you get with a good full chisel chain that you don't get on other battery chainsaws. And we've got a pretty good pile of sawdust all the way down through here. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 chunks of firewood. But that's a pretty good sized tree. I mean, it's pushing 20 inches down here on the big end, and then it doesn't get much smaller. It's probably only down to about 17 on the far end. So that's quite a bit, but it is somewhat soft. This is poplar. It's not a real hard wood, but I have no doubt that this saw is actually going to perform really well in the hardwoods and stuff too. So how did the battery hold up on those pieces? Well, according to our screen, we are showing 3/4 right now after it's sat here for a minute. Only problem with that is, while I was cutting this did get down to 1 bar. So I'm a little confused about the battery gauge, but over here on the side, it now shows 2 bars. So a minute ago, when this was showing 1 bar, it was actually showing 3 over on the battery itself. And now this is back up to 4 instead of 5. So I don't know, we'll just have to cut with it some more and see how long it actually lasts. The battery life is to be continued because, again, I didn't run through a full battery, but I don't have enough wood up here right now to actually run through a full battery. But I'm real excited about this saw because this saw performed like no other battery saw that I have ever used. And I don't know if it's due to the chain being a nice full chisel chain, or whether it's just that much better all around battery, motor, technology. I am really surprised actually by this saw. It is super smooth. It has tons of power, and battery life to be determined. So I decided, instead of cutting my fun short, I'm gonna go ahead and run this battery dead. That way I can kind of get a little bit more of an idea and have a little more time running this saw. And in between the rain, because it's not raining right now, we've got a short break, so I'm going to try to get a few things done and at least use this saw enough to give you my first impressions of it. So I've got some trees around the yard here, and this is a smaller maple tree. I'm going to go ahead and cut this down, just lay it up into the yard, and then I'll be able to cut it into firewood length and then see how much farther this battery will go. I'm going to be thoroughly impressed if I can actually get this entire tree sawn up into firewood pieces. The battery's still showing a couple bars on it, so I'm shocked. So we'll see how long it goes. We'll keep on cutting. In between time, from where I cut the big tree up there, I don't know if it has to do with the battery maybe cooling down, or where you're using so much power so fast cutting that large tree. then the cells don't have time to really sync up and read an accurate measurement on the battery because it draws so much. But after it sat for a little while, it was showing a lot higher charge than what it did once I finished cutting the tree up there. So maybe it's saying, you know, if you continue cutting at this rate, this is where your battery's at. And once you move down here and I eased up the load and started cutting a lot smaller stuff, then all that battery charge went up. So, and it's held true. Like I've been able to continue cutting. I thought I'd only get a couple cuts out of it. It's still showing 2 bars on the charge meter here. Now the battery's actually flashing red over here. I didn't realize that. So we might be getting to the end here. Aha. So I could hear the battery starting to drop down really quick right here on the end. And then right as it was starting to die, you could hear it coming down, and then it just shut off. Ooh, I was able to finish that cut. See if it's got any more in it. Nope, that's it right there. So the battery's flashing red, and the display on the saw itself is flashing on and off. So I don't know what this equates to in minutes as far as runtime goes, but I know that it equates to quite a bit of production. I would venture to say that you could cut down 2 trees this size and completely buck them up and get, you know, cut the limbs off and everything on one battery. I'm pretty impressed by that. So we're back up here at the back of the truck, and what are my first impressions of this Ego so-called farm and ranch saw? I'll have to say I think that it would be a very good farm and ranch saw, with the stipulation that a farmer and rancher is not continuously cutting firewood. Like most battery chainsaws, this one I think is going to be limited to the battery and the runtime, because now that the battery's dead, then I'm going to have to take the battery in, and I think it takes about 55 minutes or an hour or so to charge. So it's still going to take you some time to get the battery recharged. You can't just dump gas back in it and be good to go. And with that being said, if you wanted to go ahead and invest in another battery, then you could have the battery just to switch out. And if you were just doing farm and ranch stuff and not continuously cutting all the time, it would take you that 50 minutes or so to run a battery dead or more and be able to just switch batteries back and forth. But batteries on this kind of stuff are a big investment. Now this one did come in the package with a 6 amp hour battery. So you get the saw and the battery and the charger all for $4.99, which actually is a very competitive price. But for the person that is doing things like cutting trees out of trails and using a saw around their property to do the odd and end, you know, trail cleanup and tree that falls in your field, or, you know, something like that, to where that you're not working this saw day in and day out, yeah, this saw is definitely a good farm and ranch saw. And I see me using this saw probably more than any battery saw that I have now. Now I have some favorites like the Echo 56 volt. I love that saw. But it's a little different classification. It's not this big and it's not this aggressive, and it's a lightweight saw, or lighter weight saw than what this is. But if I'm going to go get my Steel Farm Boss, my MS271, I'm not going to go start that saw up to make a couple cuts and go cut up a tree off a trail or something. I'm going to use this because it's so convenient and so easy to use. You just throw the battery in it, you make sure you got bar oil in it, and then you go saw a tree out of the trail. But if I'm going to go out there and saw up firewood and spend 8 hours and just really, you know, cutting trees down and cutting them up into firewood, then I'm probably still going to resort to gas in those situations. But for an all-around utility saw, something that is very, very capable and does have a really good battery life, I am super impressed with this saw. With all that being said, in my opinion, this is probably the best battery chainsaw I've ever used. So I've got a pretty good feeling this is going to be my go-to saw. If you enjoyed the video, I really appreciate you hitting that thumbs up button. And until next time, keep it outdoors, and we'll see you on the next one.